Um, I know that people in the community don't really like Nintendo, but in this video, I'm not really saying like I support all of Nintendo's situations, but I kind of want to play devil's advocate to what their position is in regards to Smash. So I want to play it from a different position. So imagine you're a songwriter or you're an artist or you're a photographer. And you take great photos, you made this really good song, or you created this really good character that you own the rights to. And this one producer company goes to you and says, hey, I really like your stuff, and we want to include you in our book. And we're going to sell 2 million copies of the book, and we'll pay you X amount of these dollars. And you're like, yeah, sure. As long as you're only using it for this book, I'll give you rights to use my character for that amount of time. The producer company sees that the book is a really big success. Over time, people want to read the book out loud. They share it in public. People do speeches on them. And people are doing stuff with the book that the producer originally didn't imagine. Now, as a result, these other people are profiting off of this book that features your stuff, whether it's your music, your lyrics, your artwork, and everybody else is still making money somehow, but you're not making money. Now, as the artist, you're like, well, what the hell's happening here? Like, why are these other people continually profiting off of my work that I only agreed for you to have rights over for a certain amount of time? Now, if you guys are confused or lost in this analogy, what I mean is this. So Nintendo, Smash Brothers, any crossover game that features people from all across different universes, on the onset, these are great games to sell. Recognizable intellectual property, combine them with other great intellectual property, and you're like, man, like the collective audience of people who are fans of this, that, Mario, Pokemon, and all this stuff, great. It's going to sell. It's going to get a lot of eyes. Going to be a banger from the get-go. Like, how does Smash Brothers in concept, like, it's really hard to imagine that it would fail. Like, it's all the good fighting games or all the good Nintendo characters coming into one game. Now, here's Nintendo's dilemma. And this is where I'm going to play devil's advocate. So Melee came out in 2001, 2002, and back then there was no esports market. So when Nintendo says that they want to use Pokemon characters, they want to use NES, or any character that's a second party to Nintendo, they have to get permission from everybody. They have to get permission from the Mother, the Earthbound characters. They have to get permission from the Pokemon company. They have to get permission for the songs that are used in it. If there are certain assets like stages or even items used in the game, they have to get permission for it, because the one example that I've heard, and this is for Brawl, is that Sonic and Sega agreed to let Nintendo use Sonic, but one clause they had was that Sonic had to be blue. So you can't have a green colored Sonic in the game or else it breaks contract. Not only that, you look at the rights of the game. The rights of the game is that people are going to play it privately, that there was no like Twitch back then, or like no one really imagined Smash Bros. Was going to be an esport. So Nintendo could have the rights to sell the game, but do they have the rights from each individual artist, songwriter, whatever, for other people to use that game and also use their characters and stream it for their own profits? And that's where the dicey area comes for Nintendo. And this is probably part of, I mean, some of this is speculation, but this is probably the reason why Nintendo was experimenting with, and that's why they're pushing games like ARMS and Splatoon, because it's all IP that they control. So if Evo says, hey, Nintendo, can we run Splatoon? They're going to be like, yeah, sure, we own all the rights. We don't have to ask 50 million people if we can use their individual characters. And unfortunately, the process, and this is from some speculation, I can't 100% confirm everything that goes in this talk. Some of it may not be true. But when, let's say you have like a big tournament or a big brand that wants to run Super Smash Brothers, you have to ask everybody. Nintendo literally has to ask everybody who they don't really have full access rights to say like, hey, can this channel who is profiting off of your character run this broadcast? Now, from Nintendo's dilemma, I'm not sure if these individuals or companies, I don't know what their relationships are, but the tough part about this is imagine if like the people are like, no, you're not allowed to use Pikachu, or you're not allowed to use Ness, or you're not allowed to play the on-net theme, or you're not allowed to play the Final Fantasy Victory music, or like, I want a chunk of change. Well, then now Nintendo's in a very awkward spot because they can say, well, we will do it, but you're gonna have to pay us for them to broadcast your channel. I'm not saying that actually happens, but now Nintendo's in a dilemma here. And keep in mind, like, when you have a characters and when you're a large company, you want to protect how your character is distributed. So, for example, if you go to Disneyland, they have very strict protocol on their characters. So, for example, to keep the immersion for little kids correct and to keep their view of Disney characters, all together, Pluto can't be walking around Disneyland and all of a sudden take off his hat, because that would ruin, hundreds of kids' childhood. Or you can't have two Mickeys running around Disneyland at the same time, because now kids are going to think, well, that Mickey's fake. Oh, is Mickey not real? So like, there's a lot of brand guidelines that that large companies have to protect their brand, whether it's how their trademark is done, or how their characters are represented, or how Sonic can't be green. There's perfectly good reason for individual people to protect their IP. And if you're an artist, going back to the original analogy, if everybody's profiting off of your stuff, I don't think that's really fair to you. I think if we fought on the other end and we found an esports photographer getting his photos stolen from other people for exposure, we get really angry from that position. So I'm trying to really just bring this up to the other side, the other perspective. Yes, in a magical world, we'd be able to stream Melee without waiting for years on contracts. Nintendo would be a lot more supportive, but right now it's just a lot of extra hassle and legal tape that you have to jump through. And there's a lot of annoyances to deal with a crossover game. Do I wish that Nintendo spent more effort in making it more streamlined for tournament organizers? Yeah. Do I understand that Nintendo's not really incentivized to? I think the other thing is this. When we look at sales, whether or not there's an existence of a competitive community, Smash Brothers is going to sell tens of millions of copies. Whether or not the game is good, the overall fan base of Nintendo is going to sell games, whether or not a competitive community exists. So overall, from our standpoint, we really don't have much leverage. And as sad as that sounds, that's kind of reality. Do I kind of wish that there was kind of some shared interest that we could do where maybe somehow we all win? I wish there was a really good scenario for that. But there is also kind of another issue with this, is that I talked about brand protection, and when Nintendo says to a tournament, yeah, Pikachu and Mario, you can use that, whether we like it or not, every person that's at a tournament who plays on stream or who is a part of the Smash Bros. Community is indirectly going to be connected to Pikachu and Mario. So if you see, like, I don't know, let's say Alex19 or Mango do something on stream, or you see somebody even doing something casual like, drinking alcohol, and you could be 21 and over, and that's fine. But to Nintendo's eyes, like, do they want to associate Pikachu and Mario to these people who are smoking, who are drinking, who are unprofessional? And so if Nintendo were to come in, we kind of love the notion that we're a grassroots community and we're independent. We can make our own decisions. Riot, when you look at Riot or Valve, they make a lot of decisions and have a lot of control over Dota, League, and Counter-Strike, do we look at our community and say, well, do we want that amount of control or do we want complete autonomy from that? So there's a double-edged sword involved in Nintendo where with Nintendo, if Nintendo came in and supported us, they're going to have a lot of control over what content comes out of the community, which may or may not actually be a good thing. And so when Reggie said like to Hungrybox's Smash and Splash video, like, hey, like we want the Smash community to do their own thing. We recognize that there's something special there. There is actually a bit of wisdom in that, where if Nintendo were to get their hands on it, unfortunately, a lot of the decisions we make won't come at the hands of our community, but rather executives who aren't going to be the most connected in the best interest of the Smash community. And I think we're somewhat fortunate that in some aspects that we have people who are knee deep in, working in the community. People like the Genesis TOs, like Juggle Guy, Sheridan, all these people who really love the community and keep their best interests in mind as the people who are creating the structure of it, rather than having these suit and ties that don't really know what's happening or what the community actually wants making the decisions. And I think that would be really bad too. So of course there are trade-offs. The best of both worlds, what we would imagine to be is Nintendo just gives us money and resources and we could just have $1 million circuits. But the reality is there are trade-offs when Nintendo and other companies get involved and we lose control over what we want and determines we want. And there's an alternate universe where that happens and we kind of realize, hey, we lost control over our community to the point where we don't even know what it is. So those are my thoughts on Nintendo. Keep in mind, some of this is speculative. I may not be fully correct on some things, but those are just kind of my general thoughts when I talk about Nintendo, to also just provide just some devil's advocate to why it's not necessarily the easiest thing for Nintendo to make decisions that we perceive to be brain dead.